Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's AGP webinar. Thanks, obviously, for taking the time to attend. For those who don't know, I'm Lisa from the AGP office. I'm just here to help facilitate the session alongside Sarah Robinson this morning. I'll pass you over to Sarah very shortly. Just before we do, just to go through a few housekeeping rules with you, if we can, please. Can you please ensure your microphone is muted to avoid any interference or background noise during the webinar? There will be a question and answer session later on, at which point, obviously, you can come off mute and switch your microphones back on if you want to ask any questions. If you prefer, you can pop them into the chat facility on the side there, and then I'll go through those and Sarah will answer as many as possible at the end. Just to do that, can you just check? I see some of you have already put the your names and things in the side, but if you could do that for me, it just makes registering who's here a little bit easier for me if your names are not obvious. If you need any support during the webinar, I'll be here to monitor the chat, so any problems, just please pop them in there. We are being recorded this morning just to help us collate any questions or comments which we might miss. If anyone has any questions or concerns about that, please let us know. Following on from the webinar, you will receive 2 emails. We do require you to sign a digital registration form for the Welsh Government, the AG3. This will come to you from our HelloSign e-signature platform with a link. Really quick and simple to follow, so if you could do that and send it back to us as soon as possible, that would be great. This just allows us to confirm to the Welsh Government that the webinar took place and how many people attended, so it is really important that you do this for us. You'll also receive an email with a link to surveys to provide feedback to us, so all feedback is greatly appreciated, so please could you do that too. And on that note, I will hand you over to Sarah. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Morning, everyone. Hope everyone's okay and have a cup of coffee and you're all ready to go. I'm looking forward to hopefully chatting with some of you in the Q&A. So just really quickly, there's lots to get across today, so I'm going to try and fly through some of it all. If I'm going too quickly, I'm very happy to kind of do follow-up calls with people if they'd like to focus in on anything in particular we covered today. But very briefly, I'm going to be talking about LinkedIn, give you an overview of the platform that is LinkedIn and the potential of that platform. Then I'm going to hone in on some really practical tips that can be implemented really quickly and easily in terms of optimizing your profile. So some things you could do today to make a difference. I'm also going to cover making the most of groups and communities, so how you can really get the best out of groups and communities on LinkedIn. And then I'm going to be sharing some practical tips for how to find new connections and opportunities. And part of the reason this kind of webinar is so timely, I suppose, is that we're all being forced to stop the way we usually network. So I don't know about you, but most of my networking was generally done over lunches and coffees and you know, meeting people in human life, and that's just obviously not allowed anymore. It's not legal at the moment in many cases. So lots of people are having to adapt to new ways of working, but a lot of people are not necessarily optimizing the opportunities that are out there with LinkedIn. So today's session is really to give you some practical tips that you can use to try and get more out of LinkedIn during this time, but hopefully beyond this time as well. So just a little bit about me, my background. I've been working in corporate communications for 17 years. A big part of my work is around social media, so advising clients on social media, but I obviously have to generate my own business as well. So LinkedIn has been a really important tool for me. I'm also an AGP coach. So some of you might have come across me that way. So just to start off, and there's a quiz coming up, just want to check everyone's had their coffee and they're awake. So yeah, there's a prize available for this quiz as well, excitingly. So just to give you some context, LinkedIn has 75 million global users. In the UK, it has 27.8 million registered users. So that's nearly 50% of the UK population has a profile, not quite, but almost, has a profile on LinkedIn. So the quiz question for you, just to check you're all on the ball this morning, is out of those 27.8 million users, how many people do you think are posting consistently in the UK? So if you can just pop your answer in the chat, your guess, and at the end during Q&A, we'll pick the winner, and that will be the person to the nearest million. And the prize is a £20 Amazon voucher. So not to be sniffed at. So if people can stick your guesses in the chat while I'm talking, and we'll reveal the winner at the end, excitingly. So just before I kind of crack on with some practical tips. I wanted to talk really about some of the basic principles of communication, and these are principles that you should be having at the front of your mind whenever you use social media, and LinkedIn in particular. And the reason I say that is that I see a lot of people using LinkedIn to sell or to be spammy, and we all, I know that we all hate that, right? It's really annoying when your inbox is flooded with recruiters and people just trying to sell you stuff, and they've made no effort to get to know you, and there's no existing relationship there. So I think it's always really, really useful to have these principles of communication at the forefront of your mind at all times, and in particular when thinking about how you approach LinkedIn as a networking tool. So those principles are, they're really simple, but they're really important. So there's some stuff around regularity. So, don't be one of those people that has a profile and then just neglects it for years and years. Obviously, you're not going to get the most out of LinkedIn that way. There's some stuff about transparency. So that's around sharing information and being open with information, being accessible, demonstrating credibility, but doing that by showing people, not telling them. And we'll come on to some ways you can do that in your profile a bit later on. It's also really important to think about how you can engage and be engaging. So I always use the example of going into a pub and how you would behave, or a coffee shop, and how you would behave in real life. And you wouldn't go into a pub or a coffee shop with a huge megaphone just shouting at people, would you? And you hopefully wouldn't do that in a real life networking situation. But lots of people do try and do that on LinkedIn and use it as a broadcast tool. Well, if you're doing that, you're completely wasting the potential of LinkedIn to create relationships and networks that can be developed and built in real life. So it's really important to be human, be authentic, be yourself. Don't pretend to be something you're not, but amplify yourself, amplify your kind of authentic personality, and always seek to add value. So always think about how what you're contributing or what you're posting or how you're behaving in groups can add value to that group, because that's how you build a reputation and that's how you build credibility. So just bear these in mind when you're approaching LinkedIn. So my next section is talking about building the foundations for LinkedIn. So how you get the basics right. And it's amazing how many people don't get these basics right, not because they're doing anything wrong, but just sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's, and I think this is most often the case, you've had your profile for years, you might have updated it as you've moved through different roles, but you haven't really kind of sat down and looked at whether your profile is working as hard as possible for you. So today we're going to cover banner images, photographs, headlines, your about section, and a new, a relatively new feature that LinkedIn offers, which is the featured section, which can actually be really powerful if you mobilize that. So we'll cover each of these in turn. So I'm going to start off with a banner, and I'm just going to flick forward so you know what I mean by the banner, and then come back. So the banner is this image that you can see here above my profile picture. Now, the standard LinkedIn picture in that space at the moment is just kind of a weird sort of blue with some icons on it. It's very plain. And what I'm saying to you here is that you should be using this banner. If you're not optimizing this space, then you're missing a real opportunity for people who come to your page or your profile to immediately be able to see what it is that you offer. It's a great opportunity to highlight your personal brand. It's the first thing people see when they're viewing your profile, and it's even more important on mobile because it takes up quite a lot of real estate on a smartphone. So don't waste the opportunities. What I'm saying, don't just stick to the standard blue banner, because this is your chance to tell your audience all about you. What problems do you solve for your clients? It gives you an opportunity to give an instant call to action, to get your contact details in there. And yeah, it's just a great way to immediately show people what it is that you do and what it is that you can offer without them even having to scroll down. So, we're all bombarded with information all the time. We're all having to make instant decisions about who we want to connect with and why. So the banner, this kind of real estate, is a really good opportunity for you to get across your kind of key messages very quickly to people when they visit your profile. So I just wanted to show you mine as an example, but there are lots of other great examples out there, and kind of how you might use this. So you'll see the key features here are that I have my logo on the top left-hand side. The pictures in the background are just kind of visual representations of what I do. I've got what I offer to clients in there very clearly. I have a call to action because I have my email address in there, and it's important in this image that you leave space on the left-hand side for your profile picture. So you wouldn't put your email bottom left, for example, because that would just be obscured by the profile picture. So in terms of creating a graphic like this, you might look at this and think, well, how would I get something like this done? It's actually really, really easy. There's a free tool called canva.com, which I would encourage you all to go and have a look at. It's free to use. There is a professional version, which gives you access to kind of more features and more stock imagery. But the free version is perfectly fine for most people's purposes. So you just go to canva.com, set up a profile, and the best thing about it is when you click on new design, it gives you different templates. So if you click on LinkedIn banner, it gives you a blank template in exactly the right size that you need. So all you need to do is populate it with text. You know, you can drop your logo in, you can, you know, choose stock imagery to put in the background. This took me about 5 minutes to pull together, and I use Canva from time to time, but I'm absolutely not a graphic designer, as you can tell, and I'm not holding this up as a great example of graphic design by any stretch of the imagination. But what it does do is show you immediately when you visit my profile what I do before you even scroll down. So have a little think about how you could use your banner and how you could use that to really get across your kind of personal brand and also your offer to clients. My next slide is around photographs. So I get asked this a lot by people. So what should you do with your photograph? It's a really simple thing, but a lot of people get it wrong. You'd be amazed how many kind of selfies that have clearly been taken on holiday with suntan lines and cocktails and all of those type of things. And that's fine. That's fine if, you know, you're in you're in the travel industry, for example, or whatever it is. But for me, a picture should just be really plain, really simple, a good head and shoulder shot where you can clearly see your face, and don't try to be something that you're not. You know, I'm not a big fan of kind of arty pictures for the sake of it. You know, keep it simple, get somebody else to take a shot if you can, but you can take great shots on iPhone. The portrait mode on an iPhone is fantastic. You know, other smartphones have similar features where you can take a very professional looking headshot. So just think about, you know, what your picture kind of says about you. And that's all I have to say about photos, really. So moving on to headlines. So what your headline is, this little section here. So underneath your name. And the reason I'm talking about the headline is this is the thing that appears next to your name in search results. So it's actually really, really important. A headline should entice readers to click on your profile, so it makes real sense to create something unique and engaging. So many people don't use the headline, or they use it just to expand on their job title. And so some people just put their job title in there, which is a huge missed opportunity, because in your headline you have 240 characters to describe you and what makes you unique or your business unique, and really to get your offer across. So there are 3 purposes to your headline. It helps you get found, first of all. So by putting the right keywords in your headline, that means that when people are searching LinkedIn for the solutions or services that you provide, it means that you're more likely to get found and be included in listings. It grabs people's attention and it shows who you are as well. So again, a bit like the banner, it's a really early opportunity for you to get across a lot of information in a short space of time. And think about this, you know, if you're sat there waiting for potential contacts to find you, how will they find you if you don't have your industry specific keywords in your headline? So think about what kind of headline would retain your audience's attention, and what does your headline say about you as a person? So I'll just show you some examples here. I'm sorry if anyone knows Deborah, she's in London, so I'm hoping not, she's a third contact, but what you can see here, she's just listed herself as a buying manager, which is fine, but it's really boring. You know, it doesn't really tell you anything about what she does or what she's looking for or what she's trying to make. And most people probably have their job title as their headline at the moment, which is fine, but hopefully after today you can go away and think about how you can really maximise your headline for better effect. Now, I'm using Tony Thomas here as an example of a headline that I think worked really well. If you can see in his, if you can see in his headline here, he says, I help professionals restructure their finances so they can retire in comfort. There's a T dropped off at the end, but I can autofill the rest of that information. He hasn't said financial advisor. He hasn't said pensions advisor. He, in that headline, clearly demonstrates what benefit he provides to clients. And I think that's the really key thing about a headline. It's really important to get across what you can offer them and how you can change their world and make their life easier. And hopefully that makes a lot of sense. So everybody on this webinar will be able, I'm sure, to write a sentence that is an active headline that describes what they do, but that is client focused. And that's the mistake that a lot of people make. They keep the headline focused on them, you know, it's I, me. But think about your client. Think about, you know, this is a great example of a headline because it shows immediately who he's able to help and how he does that. And also, he creates this idea of a dream world, you know, restructure their finances so they can retire in comfort. Everybody can relate to that. Everybody wants that, right? So how can you do that in your sector in a way that can really resonate with your target audience? So in terms of what a good headline looks like, here's the anatomy of what a headline could look like if you were to spend some time on it. So I'm a big fan of asking questions to engage your audience. So you can see that in my headline, my first statement is not a statement, it's a question, and it's directly addressing the people that I want to work with. So do you want to tell your story more effectively? You will have a similar question as well for your target audiences. So try and get to the nub of what that is. Think about what your USP is, you know, get that in there. And then just think about your keywords for SEO and search purposes, because if you get your keywords in the headline, you're much more likely to be found by Google as well as in the LinkedIn search, because Google obviously kind of pulls from LinkedIn. So think about what your keywords are, what key phrases do you want to get across. For me, charities was really important because I work with a lot of charities. Content was really important. And I've also ended with a call to action as well, which is something you can think about if you have enough room. But a good headline, a bit like a good opening paragraph in a press release or a great subject line in an email, a good headline should give people enough information about you to want to find out more without necessarily having to scroll down. So it should grab the interest of your target audience. So I'm going to move on now to the About section. So the About section is, as you all know, that part of LinkedIn where you write about you, the bit that probably everybody dreads, filling in, where you have a word limit. And, you know, we've all been there cutting and pasting your CV and I'm thinking, how can I edit it down? And what should I say? And what should I leave out? Your About section is really important. It's the easiest way to set you apart from how many 500 million other users. So if you don't fill in that profile, that part of your profile, then again, it's a wasted opportunity. Even if you have the best headline, you've got a lovely, well-designed graphical banner, and you've filled in your detailed work in education history, leaving the summary blank is a really missed opportunity to talk about what you can offer and what sort of connections and networks you're looking to build. So do take the time to fill it in if you haven't already on your profile. And also remember that search results on LinkedIn are largely based on what you write in your profile, much like the headline. So it's another great way to be found. It's another great way to stuff all of the relevant keywords into your copy. And more importantly than that, it's your chance to showcase what you're passionate about, why you're passionate about your work. It's your opportunity to convey your personality, tell your story as well. So don't kind of use the About profile to cut and paste your CV is my overriding message today, because the problem with that, and if you have a bit of a dig around LinkedIn and just from your own use of LinkedIn, you'll know this. When you look at other profiles, think about how often they use the word I and how off-putting that can be. You know, that kind of, I did this and then I did that and then I moved to this job and then I was responsible for this amount of sales, and fine. But if I'm looking at somebody else's profile, whether it be to collaborating with them or to, employing their services or to buying off them, I don't want to see the word I everywhere. I want to see that they understand me and my world and what my needs are and what my pressures and what my challenges are. And so in that sense, it's exactly the same as, the principles are exactly the same as just general marketing principles. Think about your audience and put them first. So don't make your profile all about you. try and talk about your client's world. You know, what challenges do they face, and why should they work with you? Why should they spend money with you? A potted history of your career is not necessarily going to tick those boxes. So obviously it's important to get in why, you know, your career history, accreditations, all of that sort of stuff. All of that is important, but the way you write it is really, really critical. So I have some tips on this, because it can seem a bit daunting. I rewrote my own recently, and it is hard because writing about yourself is one of the hardest things that you can do. So here are my tips on how to kind of really strengthen your about section. First of all, make it relevant and make it timely. So what I mean here is show your audience that you understand their operating context, and obviously update your profile regularly as well. But more importantly than that, this is, you know, I've seen profiles lately, for example, there was a software provider. I was looking at the MD's profile. I was looking whether it would be something that would be of value to one of my clients. And his opening line was, in the times of COVID-19, communicating online has never been more important. It was something like that. But he'd obviously updated his profile to talk about the current climate and why that mattered and what challenges it was presenting to his target audience. So I thought that was a great example of how you can, you know, just now, if there's something big going on in your sector, if there's something happening in the wider world which is having a real impact on the people that you want to sell with, or sell to, or work with, or deal with, or network with, then say it in your profile, because it's a great opportunity to show that you understand the sector, you understand the operating context, you know, and that you're not working in this kind of bubble or this silo. You understand the world around you, and more importantly, you understand their world. That's the critical thing. Secondly, try and show your character and personality. So why are you passionate about what you do? How many clients have you helped or worked with? People do want to learn more about you in your about section. While I'm saying don't make it all about you, make it easy for them to find out why they should work with you. So try and get that across, get that passion across, get that, you know, what drives you. Try and get that across in your about profile. It's one of the few places online where you're kind of able to do that and show your personality in a professional context. So make the most of that. Thirdly, and this is a big one, a call to action. It might seem really simple, but it's really, really kind of cumbersome to have to trawl through some LinkedIn profiles to try and find email addresses for people, or, you know, some you have to go to a website and try and find them on the About Us page. If people haven't filled in their profiles properly, some people haven't left email addresses, it makes it difficult for people to contact them. So don't do that. Don't give people a reason not to get in touch with you. Make it easy. So just think about putting a phone number, if you're comfortable with sharing a phone number, or at least an email address in your call to action, so that people don't have to go digging around to contact you. And lastly, I've said it before, I can't say it enough, make it about them. So make it clear what it is that should make clients want to work with you in particular. So think about that, put that front and centre, you know, get a notepad out, think of what is the biggest challenge that my clients people in my sector are facing. What are the issues that, you know, my business solve? What's the problem that I'm solving for people? And make that problem front and centre of your profile. So in my case, I'm using this as an example. There are lots of other examples as well. So by all means, go and have a look at profiles that you think, you know, I'm not saying that this is perfect. This is just an example of how you use an about section to get across a lot of information in a short space of time, but ticking kind of all of those boxes that we've just talked about as well. So the opening sentence in my profile makes it immediately relevant today. You know, I haven't mentioned the pandemic necessarily, because I don't think that that's the only reason that it's an important time to be communicating well with your clients and target audiences. But I start with a statement, and I start with a statement that makes it relevant and kind of timely. I've made my second statement about the client. So, you know, whether you're this or this or this, looking for this, I'd like to discuss your brief. So that immediately filters in on what type of people you're available to work with or for. And try and make it personal. You know, I'd love to discuss your brief, or I'd love to meet for a coffee, or, you know, that type of language is fine as well. The other thing that you need to try and do is give credibility to your claims. So one of my pet peeves on LinkedIn is where people say, you know, I can do this, but they don't back it up. So they don't give any evidence that they can actually deliver what they say they can deliver. So I always try and give at least 3 reasons to work with you. And I'm sure you've all got way more than 3, but if you can distill it down to at least a minimum of 3 reasons why people should work with you, and then back it up with evidence. So if you're saying, I'm really, you know, strong in this area, or I have lots of experience in this area, if you've won awards, if you have, you know, won new contracts recently, if you have increased sales by 20% over a certain time period, it's really important in your about profile to try and squeeze all of those kind of career achievements into your about section, but in a way that presents it. Sorry, what am I trying to say here? In a way that presents it for and makes it obvious that this is why the client should work with you, as opposed to just a list of boasts and achievements, because there's a kind of subtle nuance there, I think. And lastly, what I've done is made it easy for people to get in touch with me. So I give my email address and my phone number, because I want people to call. Obviously, people will have different levels of comfort about that. And so you can set up just an info address if you don't want to give your personal address away. You know, however you feel comfortable and whatever works for your business. But I'd like to think that this is a much better example than I started my career in XXX, and then I was promoted to XXX, and after that I did that for 5 years, and then I took a career break, and then I did this. It's really tedious. You know, people don't have a huge amount of time to scroll through profiles and try and kind of connect the dots and put the jigsaw puzzle together of why you might be the right person to help them, especially if it's a competitive situation or they're just doing research on people to shortlist for opportunities. So your job is to connect those dots for them, make it really easy. So it's a writing skill, I guess. You know, it's a storytelling skill in and of itself. But I would definitely encourage you to all go away and just think about 2 or 3 things that you could do today to improve your about section. If you take anything from this section of the presentation, I would say make it about your clients, make it about them, and make it about their needs, their challenges. And then once you frame, you know, the problem, then you can present your solution, which is a classic kind of marketing arc, which is you frame the problem, contextualize the problem, and then offer the solution. So I wanted to spend some time also on the featured section. Now I'm going to try and work out if I can have a look at the show of hands here, because I'm genuinely interested in this. But is anyone on this webinar using the featured section on LinkedIn? So actively using it and kind of is familiar with it and knows what it does. So just a quick show of hands if anyone's using it. No? Oh, Damon, great. Okay. Okay, very few people. Not surprising in the sense that the featured section is fairly new on LinkedIn. So a lot of people don't even realize that it's there. But it's a really, really powerful functionality that LinkedIn is offering now. And I would really, really encourage you, again, after this webinar, to go away and explore the featured section and think about how you can use it. So what the featured section is an area of your profile. So on the home page of your profile, where you can showcase anything that you're proud of. So that can be posts that you've authored or reshared. It can be articles you've published on LinkedIn, any external media, so images, documents, links. You know, you could think back to a particular post that you created on LinkedIn that you've been proud of. Perhaps, you know, there was a client comment or a piece of feedback in there that you were really proud of and would want to share with people. So you can grab the URL link from that post and have it featured in this featured section, no matter how old it is. It doesn't matter how old that post is. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to stand out, this featured section. What it is really your kind of showcase. Anyone of around my age would remember having a record of achievement from secondary school. It was what you kind of took in for university interviews and that sort of thing. It's kind of like the grown-up career version of that, I suppose. So it's where you can really show off content that you're proud of it, and it's an opportunity for you to think, right, if people see 3 things about me on my homepage of my LinkedIn profile, what would I want to show off? What am I most proud of? What is the thing that tells the most compelling story about my business, you know, my capability, my services? What are they? So I'm just flicking ahead to the next slide. You can see here that so on my featured section, and it's I'm thinking about jumping out to LinkedIn to show you how to do this actually, because it's probably yeah, I'll do this after this slide. Actually, it might be easier if you're not using it already. Yeah, it's fairly simple to set up, but I could jump out and show you hopefully if we've got time, or maybe I'll do that at the end. So what you do in the featured section is it gives you the opportunity to cut and paste a link to go through any of your old LinkedIn posts and feature there. So what I've done on my homepage, and this was very deliberate, on the left hand side I cut and pasted the URL to my own website where I have a testimonials page. I thought, and the reason I did that was I thought I could ask all of the people who've very kindly given me testimonials for my website to write LinkedIn recommendations, but these are all busy people. These people tend to be, you know, chief execs, managing directors, marketing directors. I don't want to have to ask them to do something again, but also I don't want to miss the opportunity to show off these testimonials, because they really are the result of, you know, all of my years of work and all of the work that I'm most proud of. So what I've done is put a link to that web page in my featured section, and I've just said don't just take my word for it. So there's that kind of level of intrigue there where people can just click on this link and it will take them off to read some more testimonials. So that might be something to think about. You know, can you get your testimonials for your business all in one place and get them on one URL link and then show them off? Because that can be a really powerful way of showing other people or potential clients what it feels like to work with you. You know, there's nothing more powerful. Your clients are your biggest, or your happy clients are your biggest brand ambassadors. They are your biggest asset in terms of communication. So think about ways you can get them into your homepage, kind of real estate on your LinkedIn profile, and you'll be doing really well. Obviously, LinkedIn recommendations are separate things. I haven't included a section on that here just because hopefully you're all kind of familiar with them. I think that people are getting increasingly kind of tired of having to scroll down, look at those things. So anything you can put in your featured profile, which is quite high up in the real estate, will work much better for you. The second thing I've featured in my profile is a piece of work that I'm really proud of and that I ghost wrote for a client. And the third thing was a kind of voluntary, like non-exec director thing that I'm doing, that I wanted to put that in there to show that I have interests outside of the core area of my work, and I'm open to those type of opportunities as well. So that was a very deliberate thing, but I will rotate what's on this homepage fairly regularly. I'll probably keep the testimonials, but the other two things I will rotate, and I would encourage you to do the same. So if you're posting content on LinkedIn, if you're writing articles on LinkedIn and you're proud of them, put them in the featured section, definitely. So I just want to spend a little bit of time on groups now. I'm going to do another show of hands on groups, if that's okay. I can find everybody. How many people in here are actively using groups? And by actively using, I mean are a member of a group but are regularly kind of posting, reading, that sort of thing. Could you do a thumbs up if you're... No, we've got any? Damon, again, good work. Sounds like Damon's a bit of a LinkedIn pro. Adam as well. Okay, fab. Again, not surprising. I think before all of this, people have very little time to spend on LinkedIn. I'm tending to see my time on LinkedIn now as a replacement for the time that I was previously spending in real life networking. So I'm kind of treating it as a substitute for that right now. So I'm spending more time on LinkedIn than I ever have. And so, yeah, it's not surprising that a lot of you aren't using groups. And my message here around groups really is that LinkedIn groups are hubs on LinkedIn which provide a place for professionals who are in the same industry or have similar interests to share content, to find answers, to post and view jobs, to make business contacts, or to establish themselves as industry experts. So groups can be incredibly powerful ways of building your network. As we all know, it's much easier to go to an event where you all have a kind of common interest or a common sector than it is to just stand in a coffee shop and hope you make some professional connections, you know. So groups are a great way of kind of really focusing in on the type of people that you want to meet, you know, the level of person that you want to meet. So I would encourage you all to think about how you can use groups. There is a active AGP client group, which I would encourage you all to go and kind of explore. But you will also, in your sectors, have groups that are relevant to you. You'll have groups that are relevant to you, and you'll also have groups that are populated by the people that you want to be doing business with. And my first thing I want to say about groups is that they aren't a place for businesses to just blast adverts. So, you know, for those of you that have been members of groups will have come across this, where people are just sharing spammy content, they're just trying to sell. That's not what groups are about, and if you're using them that way, you're doing it all wrong. Groups are really a channel to share content for, amongst those who will find it most valuable. So groups are ways of demonstrating credibility, of demonstrating authenticity, of showing your expertise, but not by telling, by showing. And I keep coming back to this again, but don't just tell people that you're an expert, show them by adding value, by creating, sharing, curating content that would be relevant to that group and be of use to them as well. And that's how you demonstrate that you're a person that knows their stuff and is worth doing business with. So by kind of sharing things in groups and getting engaged, but in a real kind of two-way dialogue sort of way, it doesn't only mean that you'll get higher engagement, but it also means you'll have more quality interactions by doing that. And it's a great way to boost your brand, your business brand's name and your own online reputation by participating in groups. So my first tip is to search for groups relevant to your industry, and then kind of start engaging with the posts and members. You know, dip in, take it slowly. If you haven't used groups before, sit back, have a look at what other people are doing and saying, you know, listen first. And it's, again, that's one of the core principles of business. It's one of the core principles of communication. Before you talk, listen, get a feel for what challenges are facing the people in the group, what issues they're dealing with. You know, really, really listen. And once you've done that, and once you have an understanding of what that group is for and what the community is like, start getting involved in that community. So start engaging with them. And that's when you can start sharing your content, start sharing your brand's content and really building credibility. But it's really important that that content isn't all sales driven. You know, it needs to add value. Keep coming back to, how am I adding value with this content, or how am I adding value with this engagement on this group? Yeah, as I said, sharing relevant content is also a great way to drive more visitors and prospects to your website. So if you've got kind of, you know, if you have white papers or blog posts or things that are genuinely of value and interest to your audience, by all means use them on groups, but don't just spam. And just remember that the people in the LinkedIn group are already relevant to your business. So as opposed to just kind of sitting within the wider LinkedIn ecosystem, which I do, you know, when I go into my homepage on LinkedIn, I see a lot of people in Welsh business on my home. You know, I have a lot of contacts. I'm seeing a lot of people talking about a lot of different things, and that's fine. That's a bit like your newsfeed in Facebook or on Twitter. But if you really want to hone down, if you really want to have conversations with people that will make or can make a difference to your business and could be useful contacts for you, then LinkedIn groups are a great place to find people who are already in the market, who are already in your sector or a sector that you want to sell into. So it makes them extremely valuable as potential leads as well. Just a quick time check. Okay, so just some tips on making the most of groups and communities. So once you've joined them, and a good way to look for groups is just to put some keywords in the search box on LinkedIn, and you'll get a drop down menu across the top, so you can pick people or jobs or groups or opportunities. So put your search in. For me, it might be marketing, you know, if I'm looking for marketeers, because I've worked with a lot of marketing directors, or I might want to work with chief execs of charities, or I might be looking for charity groups, for example, or third sector groups. Think about what the keywords are, put them in the search box, and then have a look click on the group section and see what it throws up, and just have a bit of a dig round. Yeah, and get to know what are the relevant groups. You know, some of them will be spammy, some of them won't be that active as well. So have a look, you know, when the last post was, on how look at how engaged people are in that group. And in terms of kind of how you make the most of groups and communities once you've joined them, remember that engaging with other people's content is just as important as getting your profile right. So it's completely fine for a few weeks to not even worry about how you're going to contribute, but engage with other people's content. So, you know, if people are asking a question, answer them. If they're asking for constructive feedback, give it to them. Offer a compliment. You know, if you like something that somebody's posted, or it was valuable to you, or you learned something, say it. You know, perhaps share the post, or comment on the post at the very least. You know, give it a like. And it's the reciprocity principle of psychology that makes this so powerful. Because sorry, that's a chihuahua. I knew that would happen. So sorry. And yeah, so it's the reciprocity. So it's the principle that if you start engaging with people, I'm so sorry, I'm just going to put myself on silent a second. Jonish, sorry, I can't believe this is being recorded. Sorry about the dog. Yeah, so it's that reciprocity, as I was saying. So if you engage with people, they will start to see you as somebody worth engaging with, you know, and people will reciprocate. So again, it's the basic, you know, it's the basic principles of doing business, the basic principles of networking, the basic principles of communication. Use them online, and remember that, you know, once you start to comment on a post, or once you start to engage with people, you're now part of the discussion. So you're part of a conversation, and you will then be visible to other people who have commented, and they will receive notifications that you have contributed, even if you're not connected to them. So this is a great way to build your network. And also remember, LinkedIn is a platform to build your personal brand. And the best way to do that is by interacting with other people and highlighting your passion for what you do. Your profile in and of itself is fine. You can maximize your profile in the ways we've discussed earlier. You can absolutely make the most of your profile and make sure that it's kind of all singing, all dancing. But it's not of much use if it's just sitting there and you're waiting for people to come and find you. Your best method really for building a network and creating opportunities for your business is to get involved in groups and get involved in communities and get active, and always think about adding value. Always think about, you know, what piece of content can I share? What piece of content can we create? A lot of this will be, and this would depend on the size of your business, but some of you will have marketing professionals in the team, or you will outsource that. So you should already be creating great content as part of your kind of marketing or PR or digital strategies. So LinkedIn is a great place for sharing that content, as long as it adds value, as long as it's not just kind of selling widgets. Don't do that, because people get bored of it and it doesn't really facilitate kind of two-way conversations. And the other thing is tag people on LinkedIn. People quite often overlook this. It's a really kind of basic principle. It's a lovely way of acknowledging people, of appreciating people, of kind of giving them a bit of a shout out online. And often people will be kind of more warmly disposed towards you if you do. So for example, if you've been to a great event, not right now, but or a great virtual event, or you've seen a great piece of content, or you have received a great service from a business, for example, think about LinkedIn as a space where you can go and tag people. And hopefully you all know how to tag, but anything practical you don't know how to do that I've covered, stick it in the chat and hopefully we'll have some time to cover it later. But at them, you know, at companies and at individuals as well, because they will remember that. They will think, they seem like a nice person to do business with. They've taken the time to tag me, and they will be more disposed to do that to you in future as well. So these are just some ways that you can kind of make the most of the potential that groups and communities offer you. So as I said at the beginning, there is a really active AGP client group that's been kind of started over the last few months. That's on LinkedIn. I would encourage you to go and share that, so you can share information, knowledge, problems with other kind of CEOs who are facing similar challenges and opportunities at this time. But also seek out the groups that are relevant to you. Go and find the groups where your audience sits. Find the most active ones, listen, get a feel for the community, and then get involved. It's a really powerful way of building your network. So just jumping ahead to, so what are we, 10:15, right? Just jumping ahead to some tips on searching for new connections and opportunities. What I'm not covering in this webinar is Sales Navigator. So I'm talking about people who are using LinkedIn, possibly using LinkedIn Premium, but are using LinkedIn and primarily on the kind of free platform. There are lots and lots of ways that you can use the search functionality within LinkedIn to find highly relevant contacts and opportunities, and a lot of people don't know they exist, so I just wanted to share some of these tips with you today. So Boolean searches are your friend. That's a big message from me today. It's by far the best and most underutilized way of finding new contacts on LinkedIn. And by a Boolean search, I mean a search where you can start to put in filters. So anybody who's tried putting in a keyword to LinkedIn will know that you often pull up lots of irrelevant profiles, so people in recruitment and sales around that word, or who've used that word in a spammy way. Using Boolean searches means that you can really, really narrow down the people that you're looking to find. So you can use connecting words like and, not, and or, and these will filter out people. It helps, as I said, filter out recruitment people. Sorry to any recruitment people on the webinar, we love you really, but sometimes that's not necessarily what you're looking for when you're in a LinkedIn search situation. It also helps you get past gatekeepers and non-decision makers. So I'll show you some examples, and one exercise to do perhaps as a result of this webinar would be think about a Boolean search that you could do for your sector. So here are some examples, and these are searches that I would use for different purposes. So the first example here is, and remember to use the inverted commas as well. So I might be looking for people who work in wealth management, but I might not be looking for junior level people. I might only want to speak to managing directors because I have an event or a webinar or a product that I want to get in front of decision makers and senior kind of business owners. So I would put in wealth management and managing director, and that would filter out all of those people who work in that industry but are not at the right level. So that's a really great way of zoning in on a senior decision maker. I might want to have a look for who the best commercial lawyers are, but I might not want a load of legal recruitment profiles. So you can use the word not, which is really powerful as well. It's as powerful as and you can do searches with and not, which I'll come on to. But in this example, looking for commercial lawyers or people working in commercial law, but not recruitment, will filter out anybody in recruitment. So again, in this third example here, if I'm looking to build my network of marketing managers, specifically in Cardiff, and again, I want to filter out all the people who are recruiting in the marketing space, I would use and not to filter out the kind of people that I don't want to see in my profile searches there. And number 4 here, I might be looking for quite a broad range of people. So I might be looking for HR directors, but also looking for HR managers, but I specifically want them to be in Bristol. So this is, or London, or, you know, geographically wherever in the world. So this is a great way of really kind of narrowing down your searches when you're looking for people on LinkedIn. And this is really when you're in the scenario where you're trying to build your own network. So you're proactively going out and seeking, you know, who are the people I should be connecting with? And this might be because you're going into a new sector. It might be because you're putting on an event where you're trying to attract, and that could be a virtual event, but you want people in a particular sector, but in a particular geographic area. These searches can be really powerful. LinkedIn is so overpopulated, as we talked about at the beginning, 27 million users, that sometimes just search results on one keyword can be really onerous to have to search through and kind of filter. So Boolean searches can be a great way of really narrowing down the people that you want to speak to, and building lists of people that you know could then attempt to connect with in real life. So it's a great research tool, LinkedIn, and these searches are a great way of utilising that functionality. Just a couple of quick slides now on the process that I use, and an example of what I would usually say when I'm trying to connect with somebody. So let's say I've used a Boolean search. I found a list of 7 people that are perfect for the network that I'm trying to build. This is an example of what I would usually say in a cold invite. So when you click connect on LinkedIn, you get the option to add a personalized invitation. Lots of people are just, you know, lazy, busy, and just press no and send the connection request and hope it will just be accepted. But I find it always works much better if you can put a personalised note together that explains why you're sending the invitation for a start. So what I always do is personalise it in some way. I will make sure I use their first name. I will talk about the sector that they work in, their location. So this is an example of the type of note that I would send. You know, you can have this and cut and paste it and just kind of change it. Obviously change the name, change the sector as relevant. It doesn't take long, but it can make a huge difference in terms of the results that you get when you're asking people to connect with you on LinkedIn. And what I always try and do as well after a connection, if that connection is relevant to me in terms of they would be a potential client for me, is try and send a message once they've accepted the connection request. Now, all of you will have been in receipt of these type of messages, and they're awful when people just try and sell you something immediately. You know, you get a kind of request from an outsourced IT provider and straight away they've sent you a price list, and kind of, you know, so off-putting, isn't it? You know, again, back to the principles of networking and business and how to do, you know, networking effectively. You don't just go straight in there with a hard sell. But that first message that you send once a contact has accepted your invite is really important. This is a great opportunity to add some value, to start to build the relationship. And I keep coming back to this, but LinkedIn, whilst it's a kind of vector for real life, or a reflection of real life in the sense that, you know, it's a way of networking online, a lot of people forget those real life principles about how you would behave. You know, how would you be polite, how you would be professional in the virtual space. So taking the time to send follow-up emails or messages to connections is a really lovely way to get the relationship off the ground. You know, it's to start a dialogue, but make sure that you think about how you can offer them value through that message and make it an opportunity for them, not you. So think about your value proposition. You know, offer them something for free. In this example, I'm offering to send them a blog about something that I think would be relevant to their job. So show you know their industry and show your credibility. Again, don't just kind of just go there kind of clicking around, connecting with everybody and just hoping that they connect with you and then sitting back and doing nothing. You're wasting a massive opportunity to connect with people, to create meaningful conversations. So try and send people a follow-up when they connect with you if you can. And one last thing on voice messaging. So yeah, bit of a wild card, but I'm sure we've all sat there typing, especially on your phone. You know, I'm starting to get RSI in my right thumb from typing out long messages on my phone. I don't know about you. Have you ever kind of sat there, typed out a long message and just thought, oh God, I could have said this in 30 seconds. Well, now you can do that. So LinkedIn on a mobile offers you the voice messaging functionality. So it's only on the mobile app at the moment, but it provides you with a facility to record audio messages. And they've done some research on this, and apparently a voice message increases your chances of a response by 45%, which is like incredible, isn't it? But it provides a more human connection. So it's possibly easy, actually, when you think about it, to see why that is, because it's a great way to explain longer or more complex ideas without the time and the brain space you need to type out and edit a long message, a complicated message. Also, the lovely thing about voice messages, I've been using these on WhatsApp a lot in lockdown, is that a phone call or a coordinated phone call involves two people being free at the same time. But with a voice message, you can leave a voice message and people can listen to it at their convenience, really. So leaving a voice message can often be better for a recipient than calling them, because they can listen to it at a time that suits them. But it's a great opportunity to express yourself and think about, you know, if you're in a competitive situation, lots of people are kind of bombarding this person, you know, they're seeking freelancers to help them with something, or they're seeking a, you know, particular type of service. Lots of people are sending them messages with links to the website. If you're the one person that leaves a voice message and they've heard your voice and suddenly you're a human being, you're in 3D beyond your kind of avatar on the screen, it can really kind of bring you to life and inject some humanity into that interaction. So have a think about that. As well. It's a bit out there for some people. I completely appreciate that, but in the right sectors, for the right businesses, for the right connections, then using voice messaging could be way more powerful than sending long and complicated and, you know, boring chunks of text that people have to kind of work through in their own time. So that's something else to have a think about, which brings me to 25 past. Sorry, it's kind of run a bit quickly, but I'm happy to stay as long as I need to answer questions. And that brings me to the end of the formal bit of the presentation. And Lisa, how are we doing on questions?
Thanks, Sarah. I'm just going back to them now. There was just a couple on the chat facility that will go first, and then if anybody else wants to come off, that's fine.
Great.
How often should you update your profile to maximize search position?
Great question. I would say don't update it for the sake of it. If there's nothing to say, then don't update it. But the truth of the matter is that everybody, you know, business is such a fast-paced environment. We all work in sectors that are changing all the time. So there's no real reason why you shouldn't be updating your profile at least, you know, every few months. But, you know, in some sectors more often. There's no hard and fast rule. You know, it's not a case of, right, once a month sit down and change it. But you shouldn't really be leaving it years or even over 6 months until you update your profile, because inevitably, you know, technology is changing so fast, external kind of socio-economic factors are changing so fast that there will be things that you can address in your profile that are relevant to your business. So it's very personal and individual to you. There's no kind of set, right, every 2 weeks you need to do it. But I would say that, you know, kind of think about it regularly. Just have LinkedIn front of mind and think, right, is my profile relevant this month? Is it relevant this week? Have I addressed this kind of emerging challenge for this sector, for this audience? Does that make sense?
Cool. If you post your email or phone, will you leave yourself open to spam, etc.? I think Angie's answered.
Yes, you do. And that's a risk that I kind of take and hasn't really backfired yet. Fingers crossed. Hopefully I won't get any kind of weird phone calls after this. But yeah, of course it's a risk. And you know, my mobile phone is also my personal phone. I don't have 2 phones, so but that number is also the best way of getting hold of me. I'm a freelance. I do have an answering service actually for my business, but I give my mobile number because I just think that it seems it makes you more accessible. But I appreciate that I'm a consultant, so I'm working generally alone, but with a network of other freelancers. So that's fine for me. In your business, you know, you probably want to give the reception number. If you have a filtering number, then great. You know, I'm not saying that everybody should feel comfortable with leaving their personal phone number. On the email, again, if you're not happy to give your personal email, I think a compromise is often setting up an info @ or a contact @ email address on your domain, so people don't feel that they're reaching you personally, but that can be diverted to your inbox then. So there's lots of ways of kind of doing it in a way that doesn't expose you to that risk, I guess.
Quite a few coming through on the chat facility. I would just go, can you show how to tag others, please?
Yes, I can. Okay, so I'm going to momentarily stop my screen share. And I'm just going to log into LinkedIn so I can, and I might be able to show you some other stuff that came up in the chat as well. Okay, here we are. So I need to get back to screen share now. Share screen. Google Chrome. Okay. Right. Can you? Hopefully you can all. Lisa, can you see my LinkedIn here?
I can. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So I'm starting a post, and I want to thank somebody. I'm not going to post this post because I'm going to think of something on the spot. So thanks to. So what you do is write your text, and then you shift an @. So when you do that, LinkedIn automatically brings up all of your contacts and groups that you're connected with or following in an alphabetical order, but you'll know who they are. So let's say I want to say, somebody who wrote a great post yesterday, that you just start to write their name. You can do the same with companies. So Aon Insurance, doing some work with those recently. Thanks to @Aon for a great webinar on XXX. So that's a great way you can tag. I wanted to tag the group. No, I can't. I think I am connected to that group. But tagging is as simple as typing @ and then starting to type, you know, and whoever it is, even if you're not following them, if you're talking about, you know, the trouble Harrods are in, or, you know, if you're in the retail sector, or if you're talking to, yeah, you want to name a specific company that you're not necessarily connected to, you just type at, and then you start to type, and LinkedIn will bring it up for you as an automatic search. It's fairly straightforward. The other thing you can do down here, which LinkedIn makes really easy for you, is add in hashtags. It's very clever at this. So if you start to, on LinkedIn, write a post, then LinkedIn will scan the words that you're writing and suggest hashtags that are relevant to your post, and you just click on them, and that makes your content even more searchable then. Is that okay? I'll just stop my screen share now, but I can come back to that.
What are the main benefits of a paid subscription?
Okay, really great question. So I'm talking about LinkedIn Premium here, and LinkedIn Premium I've been using for quite a while. LinkedIn Premium is a great way for it's a great way to generate leads, in the sense that it allows you to use the in-mail function, which, so in the free version of LinkedIn, you can only message people that you're connected with, whereas on Premium, you get a certain amount of in-mails, which are essentially messages that you can send to anybody, whether or not they're in your network. The reason I use that is, just to give you an example, a while back I was working with a wealth management client that, sorry, it was a venture capital fund, but they wanted wealth managers to attend an event. And I had something like 4 days to find hundreds of wealth managers and invite them to an event. Now, obviously, that can be a really labour-intensive operation if you have to go on Google and find all those people. But using LinkedIn Premium and the email function meant that I was easily able to find people of that profile in that geographical region, and I was able to use InMail to connect with them. So there's the premium search functionality. The other thing, if you're nosy, I suppose, but can also help in terms of network building, is LinkedIn Premium allows you to look at who's been looking at your profile as well. So if somebody's been looking at your profile and, you know, they're a potential customer and you can see that, then you can follow that up, which is obviously, again, really powerful. Does that answer that question?
Okay, if it doesn't, then I can pop up and put something on there then.
Okay.
Not sure on this one. Balance between the user building their personal profile and the business they are working for.
Yeah, tough one. And I guess what I would say to that is, you know, it depends. If you're a founder of a business, it's very different to being an employee of a business. And if you have an employee who's, you know, great at building their personal brand, but perhaps it isn't reflective of your business, then that can throw up all kinds of issues. If you're a founder of a business, so if you have a stake in that business, then I think you do have much more freedom and flexibility to kind of build, use it, kind of strike more of a balance between those things. Again, there's no hard and fast rule. My kind of rule of thumb is always, would you say this in a real life networking event? Would you say this in a meeting? Is this what you want people to know about you from a professional point of view? A lot of it is common sense. Common sense isn't that common, as we've all discovered recently in various ways, but it's just having that kind of sense check and filter. But whoever asked that question is a great question, because there is a balance to be struck, absolutely.
Is this still the best platform to use for business?
Great question. I would say LinkedIn, yes. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, you know, I wasn't a big fan of LinkedIn for a while. I was actually generating a lot of work off Twitter, which was a very kind of personal brand focused place for me. But I would say that LinkedIn has added so much functionality over the last few years, you know, things like the featured section, the voice messaging. So even for free users of the platform, LinkedIn Pulse, which is gone now, but the principle of LinkedIn Pulse, which is that you can use LinkedIn as a native publishing platform. So you can publish articles on there and share them with your LinkedIn audience. All of those type of functionalities are so powerful that I would say that right now, yes, it probably is the best place, just in the sense that most people are on it. You know, it's already populated, it's already an incredibly well-used platform. So going somewhere else or anywhere else that isn't as kind of populated yet, but no doubt something will come along in the next few years to perhaps replace it. But right now, I think, yes, it absolutely is the best place to be in terms of building and cultivating a professional network and building your own brand as well. In terms of your business, that's a different thing. A lot of people have company pages because they feel they need to have them. I'd say that not all businesses need to have company pages necessarily. It's completely dependent on you, your business, your objectives, your business strategy. All of these things need to be closely linked in, which is, excuse the pun, which is why I always say that people shouldn't really jump into social media, any of the platforms, without having a clear strategy behind it and looking at what they're trying to achieve from it. So for me, LinkedIn is about kind of getting new leads. But in order to get new leads, I really have to prove credibility. So that, that's how and why I use it. But everybody will have different objectives. For some people, it will be just build, audience building. It will be awareness. But ultimately, LinkedIn is a great lead generation tool if you approach it in the right way and just kind of bear all those principles in mind that I talked about at the beginning. That kind of two-way, the engagement, the reciprocity, the adding value and the engagement piece as well.
Okay. I find it hard to separate myself from business. What's the best approach?
I would usually say a spa weekend, like get away from the screen. But I know exactly, whoever asked this question again, I can completely identify with that. I ran an agency for 7 years, really hard to kind of hit right. Where do you end and where do you as a kind of business leader or entrepreneur begin? That's tough, but what I would say about it in terms of how you use LinkedIn is just remember it's a professional space. It's a professional space. It's and that's what it's for. It's a kind of virtual, kind of the world's biggest networking event in a virtual environment. So, I guess try not to share things that you would, there are things you would share on other social media platforms that you wouldn't necessarily put on LinkedIn. But again, it's down to common sense and it's down to strategy. I'm not sure if I've answered that question really well, but like I said earlier, I'm happy to do any kind of follow-up with people who want specific.
Okay, it kind of leads into the next one there. Any tips on guidelines which a company can set for their staff who use LinkedIn?
Yes, so I've done quite a bit of this actually, and I'm not an employment lawyer, obviously. I always approach it from a kind of, what are you using LinkedIn for and what are you hoping to get out of it sort of perspective. But yes, you absolutely should have social media guidelines, and those social media guidelines should also be linked to your disciplinary policies as well. So you should make it very clear what acceptable behaviour looks like and what unacceptable behaviour looks like online, because the biggest problems that I've come across, both in employing people and dealing with clients who employ people, some of the biggest crises that I've dealt with over the last few years have actually stemmed from, disgruntled employees on social media or people with passwords. We all saw the civil service tweet recently during everything that's been going on, didn't we? I think it said arrogant and offensive, imagine working with these truth trusters, and that came from the UK civil service account. So somebody there was disgruntled and had the password. So you can't underestimate the power and the speed at which these things can take off if somebody, drops a clanger, makes a faux pas, or even worse, does something deliberately damaging. So you should have a set of guidelines. They shouldn't be long and onerous. Good guidelines can fit on 1 or 2 pages of A4, but they should make it clear what acceptable behaviour is, and and that might cover things, for example, around religion, around hate speech, around political stances, around whatever feels right for your business. Obviously it's completely individual to you, but you should make it very clear where that line is for your business, and you should make a clear link to your disciplinary policy so people understand from the minute they join your company what are the potential repercussions of them kind of not adhering to those guidelines. Does that make sense?
Okay, lovely. I've got a couple more. I know we're losing a couple because obviously they were just given an hour up this morning for the webinar. So thanks for those who are still with us here. What's the best way to increase your reach, i.e. likes, shares or comments?
Great. Okay. So that's a great question. And the LinkedIn algorithm is changing all the time, like all the other platforms. But if you want to get real traction on a post, and this is important, if you want to get real traction with a post that you're proud of, the best way to do that is by getting as much reaction on the post itself. And the reason for that is that I think it's something like 13 to 15 likes. Once your post starts to get 13 to 15 likes in a relatively short space of time, the LinkedIn algorithm will look at it and see this piece of content is valuable, this post is resonating with people, and it will bump it up the algorithm and it will be more visible to people. And the more reactions you get, the more it will be bumped up in terms of visibility. And anyone who's on Twitter will have seen this in action. If you tweet something and it quickly gets lots of likes, then that just grows exponentially. And the half-life of a tweet, I'm jumping to Twitter here, is something like 24 minutes. So if within 24 minutes it hasn't got the adoration that you were hoping for, it's probably going to die a death. And the same thing is true of LinkedIn. So if you post something great and 10 people share it, what that's done for you is amplify it. So it's increased your reach in the sense that if all of those people have 100 followers each, all of a sudden it's potentially in front of 1,000 people. We're useless at maths. However, if you get those comments and likes on the post itself, LinkedIn will do the work of kind of amplifying that to potentially far more people than you would reach through shares. So for me, when I'm advising people on content, I'm always thinking about content that will secure comments and likes as well as shares, which is great because that means you don't always have to think about something, oh, how can I make this go viral? You know, it doesn't need to. If you just ask a question, you know, if you ask a question to business owners in your sector or, you know, your target client in your sector, that can be a great way of getting people to respond. And the more comments you get, the more visible your post will be. So your job with every post is to try and get those. If you get shares as well, great. But I would say that comments and reactions and likes are the best way of kind of gaming the LinkedIn algorithm.
Ooh, there's a comment there, not sure, might need to come off the mic on that one to ask.
Okay.
Adam there, I don't know if he's still with us. I'm not sure if it was linked to a comment that you made earlier on in there, I'm not sure. We'll go on to the next one. If Adam's here, let him come off mic and say there. How can you get best effect from a company page?
Sorry, could you read that again?
Yeah, sorry, my internet may be dropping intermittently. How can you get best effect from a company page?
Best effect from a company page. Okay, so on company pages, if you have one, then I would say make sure you post to it regularly. So going back to that slide at the beginning, you know, the amount of people that are on LinkedIn and not using it, the amount of dormant company pages, so where people just set up a page so it exists and they might tag themselves as an employee or an owner of that company, but they never do anything with it. I would say that the only good reason to have a company page is if you're consistently posting information up there, and that information should adhere to all of the principles we talked about earlier. So it should think about adding value to your audience. You know, if you're just putting posts up saying we won this contract, or, you know, meet our team, all of those things are fine and they should be part of the content mix. But also a big part of your LinkedIn content strategy should be around how you can add value to your industry and to your sector and to your target audience. So the best way to make the most of a company page is to update it regularly, encourage employees to share that content, and make sure that content adds value to your audience as well. Otherwise, there's very little point in having a company page, in my opinion.
And then just a last question on there. Are you okay arranging one-to-ones with yourself?
Yeah, happy to do kind of 15-minute calls with people as a follow-up of this. Yeah, if anyone wants to cover anything that I've covered today in more detail, that would be absolutely fine with me. Sorry, I've rushed. There was a lot in that presentation. I appreciate that. And some of it is kind of technical stuff as well. So if anyone just needs to see, you know, how do I get to that section or how do I update that section, I'm happy to help with that.
That's all the questions on the side there. So,
hi, it's Adam.
Oh, Adam, there we go.
Hi there. I was listening. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the last question. I just wondered if you're trying, you know, if you have multiple businesses or multiple interests, you know, you might be CEO of one company and a non-executive of another. How do you combine that, do you feel, effectively on a LinkedIn page?
That's a really good question. what I've had people ask me before whether they should have separate profiles for their different interest areas, and I don't think that's a very good idea. What I think is if you've got lots of lots of elements about yourself, or lots of involvement. So for example, I work with people who are CEOs but also NEDs, and they do some coaching, and yeah, it's kind of right, what do I promote on LinkedIn? And the thing I always say is that kind of focus in on the one thing that's what's going to generate you the most income, or what is the area of your kind of business and professional life that you need the most leads for. Really focus in on that and use LinkedIn for that, because sometimes if you try and do everything, it can be time intensive, it's difficult, it's tricky. Sometimes if those things don't have an obvious link as well, and that can be hard. So focusing, I think, and strategy is the key, but that's not to say don't mention the other things in your profile, but maybe just zoom in on the things that matter most to you from a professional point of view. But by all means mention the other things. I've seen lots of examples of profiles of people who are operationally, and very hands-on managing directors in a very niche sector, but they also do non-exec directorships that seem completely unrelated, and they're also doing executive coaching, but they manage, the beauty of LinkedIn is you can update it regularly, so you can, say 33% of your content can be about one of those areas, and so forth. So, I think it's taking over a 6-month period or over a year, you should just be aiming to strike a balance between all of those things. But you might equally make the decision that actually this part of my professional life is something that I do, but LinkedIn is not going to be of much value to me in terms of generating leads or extending my network in this area, because I don't need to. I will focus on the area that I most need to generate leads in. Does that make sense, Adam?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Okay, I think that's everything.
Is that? Yeah, I have to answer any more questions.
Oh, this message is coming up. Oh no, just comments on your great session there.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I hope I didn't speak too fast. There was an awful lot to get through there, but I'm hoping that everybody has something practical that they can do. And honestly, to pimp your profile, to put it in my lovely terminology, it doesn't take any more than half an hour to go and do the stuff that I talked to. The writing bit can be a challenge for some people, especially when they're writing about themselves. But if you have somebody in your business who can do it for you, somebody who's a great writer, or somebody in your life who could perhaps do it for you, or at least edit or proofread or give you some critical feedback on something that you write, do that, because it can help to have an extra pair of eyes. But it doesn't need to take a long time to make your LinkedIn profile really useful, really active, and really engaging. So thank you everyone for your time, giving up an hour of your morning. It's been really lovely. Thank you. Sorry,
Sarah, do we know how to arrange the one-to-one follow-ups?
Do they want to do them through you? Do you want to filter them through you, or?
That's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Is that does that work for you?
Okay, I'll start on that one. See what I need to do. That's fine.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help any client.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take a note of those.
Some clients might need help who are not on this webinar. Really happy to speak to individual clients who are struggling with LinkedIn as well. But yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for being patient with the barking dog as well. Thank you.
It's always good to have extra input there. That's why mine's locked downstairs, not coming up.
It makes more sense than me this time of the morning.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks everybody for taking the time. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.